Fall from Glory by Nithilis Ladari. The Thieves Guild of Skyrim is something of an enigma. Within the last few decades, their order has gone from one of the largest, most influential criminal organizations in all of Tamriel to a small group of stragglers barely able to wreak havoc in their home city of Riften. Although evidence that could explain this rapid decline has never surfaced, speculation has run rampant. One theory holds that the guild suffered a loss. It strongly believed that their guildmaster was slain by one of their own. This guildmaster, known as Gallus, maintained strong ties with many of the influential families in Skyrim. When he perished, those bonds perished with him. Without these bonds, the guild could no longer safely operate within Skyrim's holds. A second theory suggests that the guild is experiencing some sort of mystical curse, causing normal activities for its members to become exceedingly difficult. While there is no solid evidence to support this theory, the last 2 decades have seen an unusual rise in failed attempts by the guild to execute high, lucrative heists. Reasons for the presence of this supposed curse is being attributed to everything from aforementioned murder to divine intervention. In order to solve this mystery once and for all, I've spent the last 2 years infiltrating the Thieves Guild. Initially, making contact with them in Riften proved difficult, as they're quite wary of outsiders. But through repeated efforts, I was able to gain their confidence. It's my hope that once I've gained access to some of the guild leadership, I can learn more about their decline and publish a second volume of my work. Although helping the guild perform their petty crime brands me as a criminal, I feel that it's a burden worth bearing. The mystery of the Thieves Guild's fall from power needs to be solved once and for all as a matter of record and as a footnote to Skyrim's history. An overview of gods and worship in Tamriel by Brother Hedgefeld. Editor's note. Brother Hedgefeld is an associate scribe at the Imperial University, Office of Introductory Studies. Gods are commonly judged upon evidence of their interest in worldly matters. A central belief in active participation of deities in mundane matters can be challenged by the reference to apparent apathy and indifference on part of gods during times of plague or famine. From intervention in legendary quests to manifestations in common daily life, no pattern for the gods of Tamriel activities is readily perceived. The concerns of gods in many ways may seem unrelated, or at best, unconcerned with the daily trials of the mortal realm. The expectations do exist, however. Many historical records and legends point to the direct intervention of one or more gods at a time of great need. Many heroic tales recount blessings that the divinity bestowed upon heroic figures who worked or quested for the good of a deity or the deity's temple. Some of the more powerful artifacts in the known world were originally bestowed upon their owners through such reward. It has also been reported that priests of high ranking in their temples may on occasion call upon their deity for blessings or help in the time of need. The exact nature of such contact and the blessings bestowed is given to much speculation, as the temples hold such associations secret and holy. This direct contact gives weight to the beliefs that the gods are aware of the mortal realm. In many circumstances, however, these same gods will do nothing in the face of suffering and death, seeming to feel no need to interfere. It is thus possible to conclude that we, as mortals, may not be capable of understanding more than a small fraction of the reasoning and logic such beings use. One defining characteristic of all gods and goddesses is their interest in worship and deeds. Deeds in the form of holy quests are just one of the many things that bring attention of a deity. Deeds in everyday life, by conforming to the statutes and obligations of individual temples, are commonly supposed to please a deity. Performance of ceremony in a temple may also bring a deity's attention. Ceremonies vary according to the individual deity. The results are not always apparent, but sacrifice and offerings are usually required to have any hope of gaining a deity's attention. While direct intervention in daily temple life has been recorded, the exact nature of the presence of a god in daily mundane life is a subject to controversy. A traditional saying of the Wood Elves is that one man's miracle is another man's accident. While some gods are believed to take an active part of daily life, others are well known for their lack of interest in temporal affairs. It has been theorized that gods do in fact gain strength from such things as worship through praise, sacrifice, and deed. It may even be theorized that the number of worshippers a given deity has may reflect on his overall position among the gods. This is my own conjecture, garnered from the apparent ability of the larger temples to attain blessings and assistance from their god with greater ease than smaller religious institutions. There are reports of the existence of spirits in our world that have the same capacity to use actions and deeds of mortals to strengthen themselves as do the gods. The understanding of the exact nature of such creatures would allow us to understand with more clarity the connection between a deity and the deity's worshippers. The implication of the existence of such spirits leads to the speculation that these spirits may even be capable of raising themselves to the level of a god or goddess. Marusua of the Imperial Seminary was suggested that these spirits may be the remains of gods and goddesses, who through time lost all or most of their following, reverting to their earliest, most basic form. Practitioners of the old ways say that there are no gods, just greater and lesser spirits. Perhaps it is possible for all theories to be true. Ode to the Mighty Tundrastriders. O mighty Tundrastrider, how you and your mighty tusked beast silhouette against the great orange expanse. Thundering footsteps herald your herd, man and beast blazing trail together. One in nature, each relying upon the other, more than just man and beast, but equals who need one another to survive. How I long to run across the tundra in their mighty wake. That would truly be my greatest honor. The morning would be spent gathering dyes to paint our mammoths, and then carve the fiercest image into their tusks. Then it would be time for the skeever hunt. Our clubs would rain down upon the rat pests, smashing the life out of them. In the evening could sit around the campfire, and I would regale those nearby with songs of their majesty and grace. They would let me sample of the mammoth cheese, a food so foul yet with healing properties so great. We'd snack on the roasted skeever we'd freshly caught that day before laying under the stars to sleep. I'd slowly fade to dream nested in the radiating heat of mammoth's fur, its cold-resisting properties keeping me snug. What a grand time we would have. Unknown. Surfeit of Thieves by Anis Noru. This looks interesting, said Indik, his eyes narrowing to observe the black caravan making its way to the spires of the secluded castle. A gaudy alien coat of arms marked each carriage, the lacquer glistening in the light of the moons. Who do you suppose they are? They're obviously well off, smiled his partner Hariah. Perhaps some new imperial cult dedicated to the acquisition of wealth. Go into town and find out what you can about the castle, said Indik. I'll see if I can learn anything about who these strangers are. We meet on this hill tomorrow night. Hariah had two great skills, picking locks and picking information. By dusk of the following day, she had returned to the hill. Indik joined her an hour later. The place is called Ald Alrira, she explained. It dates back to the Second Era when a collection of nobles built it to protect themselves during one of the epidemics. They didn't want any of the diseased masses to get into their midst and spread the plague, so they built up quite a sophisticated security system for the time. Of course, it's mostly fallen into ruin. But I have a good idea about what kind of locks and traps might still be operational. What did you find out? I wasn't nearly so successful, frowned Indik. No one seemed to have any idea about the group, even that they were here. I was about to give up, but at the Chatterhouse, I met a monk who said his masters were a hermetic group called the Order of Saint Ednua. I talked to him for some time, this fellow name of Patharion, and it seems they're having some sort of ritual feast tonight. Are they wealthy? Asked Hariah impatiently. Embarrassingly so, according to the fellow. But they're only at the castle for tonight. I have my picks on me, winked Haraya. Opportunity has smiled on us. She drew a diagram of the castle in the dirt. The main hall and kitchen were near the front gate, and the stables and secured armory were in the back. The thieves had a system that never failed. Haraya would find a way into the castle and collect as much loot as possible, while Indik provided the distraction. He waited until his partner had scaled the wall before rapping on the gate. Perhaps this time he would be a bard or a lost adventurer. The details were most fun to improvise. Haraya heard Indik talking to the woman who came to the gate, but she was too far away to hear the words exchanged. He was evidently successful. A moment later, she heard the door shut. The man had charm. She would give him that. Only a few of the traps and locks to the armory had been set. Undoubtedly, many of the keys had been lost to time. Whatever servants had been in charge of securing the Order's treasures had brought a few new locks to affix. It took extra time to maneuver the intricate hasps and bolts of the new traps before proceeding to the old but still working systems. But Haraya found her heart beating with anticipation. Whatever lay beyond the door, she thought, must be of sufficient value to merit such protection. When at last the door swung quietly open, the thief found her avaricious dreams paled to reality. A mountain of golden treasure, ancient relics glimmering with untapped magic, weaponry of matchless quality, gemstones the size of her fist, row after row of strange potions and stacks of valuable documents and scrolls. She was so enthralled by the sight she did not hear the man behind her approach. "You must be Lady Trest," said the voice, and she jumped. It was a monk in a black hooded robe, intricately woven with silver and gold threads. For a moment she could not speak. This was the sort of encounter that Indik loved, but she could think to do nothing but nod her head, with what she hoped looked like certainty. "I'm afraid I'm a little lost," she stammered. "I can see that," the man laughed. "That's the armory. I'll show you the way to the dining hall. We were afraid you weren't going to arrive. The feast is nearly over." Haraya followed the monk across the courtyard to the double doors leading to the dining hall. A robe identical to the ones he was wearing hung on the hook outside, and he handed it to her with a knowing smile. She slipped it on. She mimicked him as she lowered the hood over her head and entered the hall. Torches illuminated the figures within around the large table. Each wore the uniform black robe that covered all features, and from the look of things, the feast was over. Empty plates, platters, and glasses filled every inch of the wood, with only the finest spots and dribbles of the food remaining. It was a breaking of a feast, it seemed. For a moment, Haraya stopped to think about poor, lost Lady Trest, who had missed her opportunity for gluttony. The only unusual item on the table was its centerpiece, a huge golden hourglass which was on its last minute's worth of sand. Though each person looked alike, some were sleeping, some were chatting merrily to one another, and one was playing a lute. Indik's lute, she noticed, and then noticed Indik's ring on the man's finger. Haraya was suddenly grateful for the anonymity of the hood. Perhaps Indik would not realize that it was she, and that she had blundered. "Trest," said the young man to the assembled, who turned as one to her and burst into applause. The conscious members of the order arose to kiss her hand and introduce themselves. Nerdla, Siulek, Kyler, the names got stranger, Tonyop, Hiltis, Neutrup. She could not help laughing. "I understand, it's all backwards. Your real names are Aldurin, Celius, Relic, Poignant, Stillith, Parathian." "Of course," said the young man. "Won't you have a seat?" "Say," giggled Haraya, getting into the spirit of the mask and taking an empty chair. "I suppose that when the hourglass runs out, the backwards names go back to normal." "That's correct, Trest," said the woman next to her. "It's just one of the Order's little amusements." This castle seemed like the appropriately ironic venue for our feast, devised as it was to shun the plague victims who were, in their way, a walking dead. Haraya felt herself lightheaded from the odor of the torches and bumped into the sleeping man next to her. He fell face forward onto the table. "Poor Esruik Tsarif," said a neighboring man, helping to prop the body up. "He's given us so much." Haraya stumbled to her feet and began walking uncertainly to the front gate. "Where are you going, Trest?" asked one of the figures, his voice taking on an unpleasant mocking quality. "My name isn't Trest," she mumbled, gripping Indik's arm. I'm sorry, partner. We need to go. The last crumb of sand fell in the hourglass as the man pulled back his hood. It was not Indic. It was not even human, but a stretched grotesquerie of a man with hungry eyes and a wide mouth filled with tusk-like fangs. Haraya fell back into the chair of the figure they called Esruik Srif, whose hood fell open, revealing the pallid, bloodless face of Indic. As she began to scream, they fell on her. In her last living moments, Haraya finally spelled Trest backwards.